Welcome to the Beat. I'm Ari Melber, and we have a lot tonight, including James Carville just around the corner on the Trump-Epstein crash out. But we begin with how the agenda of this president in this summer period is completely smothered by his mishandling of Epstein, their prior relationship, their social links, the first administration, where, as I've reminded you, Jeffrey Epstein died under suspicious circumstances under the Trump DOJ custody, and all the recent broken promises. Now, we have what has become a bizarre turn in a story that for some people on the right was always a conspiracy content thing, but of course rests on a foundation of real crimes, real victims, and at least one person, of course, in prison, the convicted sex trafficker, Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's conspirator. Now, there's talk of her trying to get out of prison if Donald Trump will help her. This normally would not even be a thing that we would cover, for example, if she were just asking for this randomly with no other ties to the administration. But this is a Trump DOJ that has pulled her out of prison for interviews, and a president who has done what was previously unthinkable, which is leave open the door to a pardon for this person. This is all playing out while Trump is dogged by these questions, ducking reporters, can't get away from this even as he went all the way to Scotland. This is from Sky News.
Are you enjoying the Scottish hospitality?
There were Sky News questions, sure.
Mr. Trump, can you escape the Jeffrey Epstein crisis?
Maybe that's why we heard this.
What's that song?
I don't know, it's very famous though.
It's from a musical. Yeah. Memories.
Music boomed out from the convoy of golf carts, drowning out the surrounding sound.
It is, of course, just one moment and one tactic, but also is the very living allegory of the problem for this president. Flying across the pond, can't get away from the story. Driving, literally away from the questions that are still being shouted, and somebody apparently playing music, trying to literally drown out the questions, but that's not working. Doesn't work on the baseline step of saying, oh, we heard music, so we won't cover it. Sky obviously still made a point to cover that. We're showing you how that's being covered by journalists abroad. But more substantively, the questions that you do not answer about something this big that was sold this much by Trump and Bondi and his allies are not going to just go away by turning up the music. They can wait, they can dodge, but they'll be coming home to a continuation of questions like this on the flight back.
You said yesterday your falling out with Jeffrey Epstein was over him taking some of the workers from your business. But your administration in the past said that you threw him out because he was a creep. So can you explain that discrepancy?
They're the same thing, sort of a little bit of the same thing. But no, he took people that worked for me, and I told him don't do it anymore, and he did it. And I said, stay the hell out of here. Mr. President,
Did one of those stolen, persons that include Virginia Jeffrey?
I don't know. I think she worked at the spa. I think so. I think that was one of the people. Yeah, he stole her.
What you heard there, and you can see it in the transcript, is this Trumpian style of speech that we've all become somewhat accustomed to. I don't know. Not sure. I think so. Landing on the yeah. Now, if this were a random question about an old story and you said, well, give someone the benefit of the doubt, maybe they're trying to remember, but there's nothing random about it. This is the story that has consumed Donald Trump as president for many days now, but of course, as a candidate for many months when he sold a certain version of it. His history with Epstein and those people and those victims are all something that he has had time to reflect on, and he seems to be unable to clearly explain what he did then, what the nature of their relationship was, how it ended, what he did or didn't say to him at the time. Maybe they were friends without any other crimes, but why deny and sue the Wall Street Journal over those alleged birthday salutations if that's all they were? These are the kind of questions that are dragging down Trump. And that's the Epstein history personally. That's before you even get to, of course, the handling of this in government. That MAGA and other critics are dealing with not only whatever Trump's personal history may or may not be, could be nothing of an ethical or legal dimension. That's possible. And he still has to answer for why there is the apparent secrecy, the broken vow to release material, and now what many podcasters and critics call a blatant cover-up. They put out a memo saying we can't release anything more. Days later, under pressure, Trump says we might release more. All of it looks like a Watergate of sex trafficking. Doesn't mean we know who was involved beyond what the case showed. I want to be very clear. I've said that repeatedly. But it does mean on the cover-up side, there are questions that are just not being answered, whether that's from reporters, MAGA allies, legal analysts, and we've heard, of course, from some victims who've also criticized the Trump government administration's handling of this, totally separate from whatever happened back at Mar-a-Lago. In Washington, Republicans are subpoenaing Maxwell, partly because they apparently don't think that whatever DOJ did is enough. They want to talk to her themselves. And some Democrats say what DOJ did is suspicious. So again, a bipartisan view that other government officials are breaking with Trump and want to handle this separately because they don't trust him. Maxwell even saying she would testify to the Congress under conditions like immunity and getting some briefing about advanced questions. Committee says it won't try to grant her immunity. It's not even clear when you're already incarcerated in these federal crimes what other immunity would really be relevant, except for perhaps, of course, lying to Congress and perjury. Maxwell's lawyer, talking about Trump, says in the alternative, were she to get, quote, clemency, she'd be willing and eager to testify openly and honestly in public before Congress. Maxwell's attorney is basically telegraphing something in public. She is the one person who's paid the most for what was then defendant and then deceased Epstein's alleged crimes. He never went to trial on many of those sordid things. The idea that there's any discussion or open door to letting her out of prison right now is not only completely legally baseless and ethically curious, but it also would be the exact opposite of what MAGA and other folks said was so important about this story. Remember that Epstein and his co-conspirators did bad things. So why would Trump leave that door open? I'm asking these questions, but I'm not pretending these are just open neutral. Some of these questions raise more questions, like why are we even talking about pardoning someone involved and convicted of the sex trafficking of minors? There's also heat on Trump from the right. We've seen this over the weeks. We saw it last week. We saw Rogan. Here is Megyn Kelly, who has been, especially in Trump's second term, a staunch MAGA ally on a ton of issues, some controversies, federal power, ICE, etc. Here's her scathing takedown on this governmental part. Remember what I told you, how this Trump administration itself has been handling this case.
It's the way they've handled the scandal has been so bad, leading everybody up to the water's edge and then not giving anyone a drink. It's like rule one of how not to play out a scandal. What do you think?
Completely agree. This is self-inflicted. First of all, nobody told Pam Bondi she had to issue that memo in the middle of a slow news summer where people would, of course, predictably be digesting it and the Republican base be horrified by it for the entire summer. That's really how this is unfolded. And whoever told the Justice Department that this could somehow be buried and that people would move on and that the Trump administration could get away with that ridiculous 2-page summation of you're not getting any more information because there's no there should be fired. That person is an idiot and didn't understand the Republican base, certainly the core MAGA base. So now can we really trust anything this woman says when it's either this, give something up or someone up or spend 20 years in jail? So they've really created this own pickle for themselves, and we still haven't had a presser by Pam Bondi or even a long-form interview. So it's hard to have a lot of sympathy for the complaints of why won't this go away?
That's Megyn Kelly's breakdown, speaking as someone who knows this universe. She's interviewed Trump. She's in the MAGA podcast digital space now. She was, of course, at Fox News prior. She's also an attorney. And she referred to some very public facts there, that Bondi was doing all these interviews and selling all this without giving it up for allegedly, according to Kelly, what she views as Bondi's aggrandizement on the political right. Then, as Piers Morgan mentions, they came up with nothing. And then, as Kelly explains, they've gone quiet. No press conference, no governing apparent obligation to explain this beyond those 2 pages. In a well-functioning government, you have government officials who speak to journalists, credentialed press, and of course, other branches of government like Congress. Bondi could testify, could even privately brief the Congress if any of this were serious and on the level. But what you're also seeing, and this is why it's a story with layers, is what Piers Morgan and Megyn Kelly and Joe Rogan appear to be frustrated with, what Rogan called the gaslighting by the administration, what Kelly says is the refusal to deal with journalists and critics fairly, is something that Trump has been rightly accused of on a host of issues in this and the last term. We're not new to this. And yet some people seem absolutely aghast and upset about the, quote, gaslighting Rogan or the stonewalling of journalistic and open interview questions. Kelly, as if this has not been the playbook all the time. Apparently, and this is where the humanity comes into it because it is all people dealing with politics here. Apparently, those people, and I say this fully respectfully, don't like it when that MAGA playbook is used on them. We're joined now by Molly Jong-Fast from Vanity Fair and MSNBC analyst, and Julie K. Brown, an investigative journalist with the Miami Herald, who's won 2 Polk Awards for excellence in journalism, is really one of the foremost national experts on Epstein. And I mean on the case, the victims, the substance of this, not some of what has passed for the political circus since then. She's the author of Perversion of Justice, the Jeffrey Epstein Story. Welcome to both of you. And it is with no negativity towards our good friend Molly Jong-Fast that Molly and I will start with the politics, and then we'll go to Julie's fine reporting. I say that with respect to all. But Molly, I will start on the politics. What do you think of this almost angry shock by MAGA leaders, and credit to ones like Rogan who are being honest, that they don't like that they say Trump is lying to them about an important matter?
I'm agreeing with Megyn Kelly, and it's freaking me out. She had a lot of good points. Why should we believe anything that Ghislaine Maxwell says? She was sentenced 4 years ago. They clearly wants a pardon. The idea that she has some new information seems pretty wild. But I also think the bigger problem that Trump has, and Megyn Kelly made a really good point here, which is they have created a problem for themselves in the Trump administration. And one of the ways they've done that is you have Pam Bondi, who runs a DOJ that really does serve at the pleasure of Donald Trump. And previous administrations have normally had a firewall between the admin and the DOJ. And they've done that for a reason, right? The DOJ is supposed to be independent. They are supposed to do their own investigations. They are not supposed to serve as an arm of an administration. But you see, Bondi has been very much, sort of deferential, and I serve at the pleasure of Donald Trump. And that means that they have no plausible deniability in the admin. They have the DOJ as sort of an arm of the presidency, and this creates even more of a feeling that this DOJ is really working for the guy in charge.
Yeah, all fair. That speaks to how Bondi has sort of set the tone this far. Julie, as someone who's been so versed in the reporting here, and as I mentioned, the serious stories, the victims affected, the families and lives altered, if not to some degree irrevocably altered, what do you see as important? What is your vantage point, having been with this not as political content, but as reporting on real people?
Well, I always say I think that the Justice Department has failed multiple times, failed these victims. From the very beginning when Maria Farmer went to the FBI and nothing was done, which was way back in the early 2000s. So it's just more of the same, disappointment upon disappointment for these victims. I doubt that they were even contacted when the DOJ decided that they weren't going to release the records. And that's sort of the pattern here, treating the victims as an afterthought when really they should be considered first and foremost in at least some of these decisions.
Yeah.
And they should have the respect of being told about.
Let me slow you down, because for the important point you're making, obviously there's been a lot of politics on the right here. You're observing that if the DOJ, given what everyone went through, was going to put out a memo about a resolution of this, the normal course, the proper thing would be to deal with the victims' families in the same way they have impact statements in court, and not to treat it as a 2-page PR move, you're saying.
Exactly. And not only that, but the president, I think within days of that happening and, the explosion of coverage that we saw of it, started calling it a hoax. And could you imagine if you were sexually abused as a child repeatedly, and the president of the United States is calling this whole scandal a hoax? It's not a hoax. And, there are real victims over, probably over 200 young women and girls. So it's more of our criminal justice system giving people who have power and money precedence over vulnerable, in this case, a lot of vulnerable girls and young women.
And Julie, as you know, this was a huge deal before Epstein died in custody. It was under the Trump Justice Department and Bureau of Prisons. It was suspicious, and it took years to get further information about it. Given your reporting, how do you view that in custody death and the government's explanations for it?
Well, there's a lot of questions about it. Don't think we know the answers to, and it's fueled. The conspiracy theories surrounding this case are fueled by things such as the Trump administration releasing this video purportedly to show something about Epstein's cell, when in fact the video that was in Epstein's wing was not operating. It wasn't recording that night. In fact, none of the cameras, except for the one that they grabbed that footage from, were working. And that footage is not of Epstein's cell. So why would you do that? I mean, I don't even understand why you would show that to the public and try to purport that it showed anything, because it's not his cell.
Do you think?
It's just a whole other
Do you think?
area of the. Go
So
ahead.
do you think it
I'm
was
sorry.
misleading, that it was in bad faith? Well, I just want to zero in on that because, yes, they tried to show that in
Yeah.
conjunction with a memo to say, we're done here. What Megyn Kelly said, hey, go home. You're saying that itself looks misleading from the Trump DOJ.
Yes, that's exactly right. It is misleading.
Yeah.
It's still out
Yeah.
there, that people are talking about the missing minutes. Well, the missing minutes are one thing, which are problematic, but the bigger thing is that footage isn't even of a cell.
Yeah. And so, Molly, in conclusion, it's almost enough to make you wonder whether this administration and this president is honest about how he's governing and the affected lives of Americans.
Yeah, and I think Julie has a really good point here, which is if you want to shut down a conspiracy, and again, obviously there are things in the Epstein story that are real victims, and things that are questions, right? We don't know, but the way to shut it down or to answer questions is with a lot of data, right? Evidence, pictures. We know there are thousands of pages of data. You may have to retract some things, but ultimately there's a lot of stuff that could be released. And I think releasing it will answer more questions. And, obviously you need to protect the victims. That should be number one. And I do think Julie really has a good point, which is there are so many victims, and it is, the way we treat our victims is a measure of how we are as a society. So I do ultimately think it's really an important moral moment for all of us. But I also think there are ways to get this information out there. And that is really what these people are asking for.
Yeah. Molly and Julie, my thanks to both of you. Coming up tonight, we have a special look at the attacks on the free press and how some of this is getting worse. We also have a lawyer representing one of the new whistleblowers in that DOJ case against basically whistleblower complaints that say they wanted to tell the courts F you and a lot of other things. There's a Senate vote looming about that. But first, next, we have James Carville on MAGA's biggest break with Trump ever when we're back in 90 seconds.
He's stole people that work for me.
Sorry, Jeff, underage sex trafficking is one thing, but I draw the line at you stealing my omelet man, okay?
Stephen Colbert finding a thin ray of humor amidst a serious story. We are now joined by longtime Democratic strategist, former President Clinton advisor, James Carville. Welcome back. James, we've heard from you about Trump, the politics of the right and MAGA, and the loyalty we're accustomed to seeing. Is this the biggest crack we've seen in the second term, and why is that loyalty fading?
Well, I think it is a huge crack because it's an article of faith on the right that there are a cabal of coastal elites who are engaged in some kind of underage sex trafficking. See the Comet Pizza story where their guy showed up. The problem is they were right, but it was one of their own. So that is just in ways that's inbred in them, like it's just part of their DNA, that entire narrative. And to some extent, they feel vindicated by this. See, we told you, these rich people, these New York finance people, these people in Palm Beach, they live by one set of rules. We live by another set of rules. And the actual theory of the case was pretty good. But it wasn't it wasn't Chuck Schumer. It was somebody else. And that's why they're having trouble dealing with this. And it just confirms a lot. And maybe the question that Megyn Kelly had and Molly was talking about, maybe there is no good answer. Sometimes that happens. They say, well, it's the way they put the information out. They don't have a very good response. Their responses cause us to ask more questions. Well, sometimes there just isn't a good answer. And I've talked to 5 different people a day, and just out of theoretically, how would you handle this if you were there? Just assume this is you. Everybody came to the same conclusion. I don't know if there is a way to handle it. It's really
On that
amazing.
point, why do you think Trump's handling it so poorly? I mean, you've talked before because we come to you for blunt criticism, but you're not the guy who says Democrats are always perfect. You didn't tell us Biden was perfect. You talked about age and fitness before he dropped out. You've said that Trump has been effective at times and Democrats have not. But here it's the opposite. Here the PR wizard seems to be melting down and crashing out in public and saying things that no one would want to be their lead defense when these kind of questions are looming.
So maybe he's guilty. So maybe there is maybe he's scared to death at the more look. The other thing that's really interesting in here is the role of Melania and Jeffrey Epstein and Trump in the modeling business in New York City and Manhattan in the early 90s. I mean, that was a different world of event. And now, of course, you have Epstein. What do you have? A guy that hangs himself in a jail cell. You had this guy, Jean-Luc Brunel. We forget about him, who has a modeling agency in Paris that hung himself. Maybe there's something really scandalous and really historic at the bottom of all this. I'm not saying I don't have proof there is, but
Well, we don't know. We're not reporting that. I
Maybe
understand.
maybe this is one of these really weird coastal modeling agency sex trafficking things that lies at the court is. That we got to consider that possibility.
Right. And that when you say consider the possibility, that's what happens in investigations that are run correctly. And you don't go around and say, oh, as the Wall Street Journal reports, if an important person's name was mentioned, whatever party, in this case, they report that Bondi told Trump it was Trump. That doesn't cool your heels on the release. But of course, that brings us back to where we started, which is why, as you said, they may not have a good answer. It's also breaking through. I want to show a little late night and get your response to this.
It's the way they've handled the scandal has been so bad, leading everybody up to the water's edge and then not giving anyone a drink.
Completely agree. This is self-inflicted. Now the president's very annoyed that it won't go away. It won't go away because of the way he's handled it. They've really created this own pickle for themselves, and we still haven't had a presser by Pam Bondi or even a long-form interview. So it's hard to have a lot of sympathy for the complaints of why won't this go away?
I never had the privilege of going to his island.
You were doing really good right until privilege. Privilege was not the word you wanted to use. A trip to that terrible island was sadly not an honor that was ever bestowed upon me.
I'm sorry, what? What? You never had the privilege of going to Epstein's island?
Sadly, I never had the honor of dining with Jeffrey Dahmer.
Trump said he was invited to the island but didn't want to go. I get it. It's so annoying when you get invited to a destination crime scene, isn't
it? I mean, James, this is everywhere. Go ahead.
Yeah, I hate to laugh because there are dead people involved here. There are females whose lives, they're young girls now, adults whose lives have been ruined forever. You saw your guys and Julia came around. But I'm sorry, you just can't help but bust out laughing at some of this. And again, I'd say to Piers, I'd say to Megyn Kelly, maybe there is no good answer. And sometimes that happens when you're in the middle of a PR crisis, is people kind of have it figured out. And if they try to give Maxwell a pardon, go look at the sentencing memo that the U.S. attorney put in the Southern District of New York. Look at what the judge said. They could have convicted her on 4 or 5 different charges of perjury. And then, Ari, we tend to forget if they do pardon her, the New Mexico authorities might get involved because Epstein had like a 7,500 acre ranch outside of Santa Fe, and there's stories about that being part of the stops on the travel log. I don't know, but I suspect there'll be some curiosity from maybe the statute of limitations is run. I don't know, but their questions are a lot. They got a lot. There's a lot. There's a lot of baseball left to play here. That's all I can say. It's not even close to being
a lot of innings left. And I appreciate your point. There's the seriousness, and we had the great investigative reporter Julie Brown who wrote a whole book on this and worked with victims and families.
Right.
And yet her view, her journalistic objective view, overlaps with what you and, by the way, Megyn Kelly and others are saying, which is that this Trump administration, this government handling of the case is wrong, is secretive, is misleading to the American public. Some people care about that for the weird conspiracy political reasons you mentioned. Some people care about it because they actually care about the people. You put it all together and you got a 70+% negative for Trump on this big story that he was feeding. So, James, I know you're sticking with us. I want you to know when you sit perfectly still, the Statue of Liberty crown behind you almost looks like you're wearing it. And I know you love this country. I know you love this country, so it's a good look. We'll be right back with more Carville after this.
Thank you.
We're back with Democratic strategist James Carville. James, the other stuff going on in this August recess area, period, as they head towards recesses and in the House, they don't want a whole lot of votes, but Republicans are on defense, of course, over the big vote they did have. I want to play one of these ads.
They promised to bring down prices, but instead, our Congressman Derek Van Orden just voted to make our monthly bills go up. Van Orden's plan takes Medicaid away from millions of Americans, which means they'll pay thousands out of pocket for care. And it removes clean energy from the electric grid, creating a massive rate hike on electricity. And it's all just to cut taxes, yet again, for the super rich. Everything costs too much already, and Congressman Van Orden just voted to make it even worse.
James, Democrats hitting this, your thoughts?
Well, first of all, there was an article in Politico where the National Republican Congressional Campaign Committee said they should run on the big, beautiful bill, and I agree completely. I think we can have an election about an issue. We don't need a personality conflict. We can talk about whether this was good policy or not. And that is an argument that Democrats are going to win every time. Now, of course, they also recommended that they don't go to town halls. But as you know, I'm pretty public that I think this is a golden strategic opportunity for the midterms, because I think every Democrat, regardless of what they are, a progressive Democrat, a moderate Democrat, a coastal, a interior Democrat, I think we can all agree this is one horrific piece of legislation. And I think we just have to just drive that home, probably to the exclusion of everything else.
Well, you mentioned the political reporting that some Republicans, whether it's a head fake or not, doing that. First of all, I got to know, when do you start? We can't get an article by you, James, because I'm going to show it in a second. But when do you start your reading? You read in first thing in the morning? When do you do your media diet?
I don't know. As soon as I get up in the morning, I go through the normal things that other people do. I look for the clips. But what I look is when somebody's politically, when I see a story about this is their campaign strategy, then
This is what they say, yeah. So I'll put this up because it's summer.
We can engage.
It's summer. Not everybody's reading. Not everybody's reading everything. This is the headline. GOP memo says members should go on offense over mega bill. National Republicans want their House conference to sell President Trump's mega bill during Congress's August recess. I think we have that. Yep. Rather than duck, the best defense is a good offense, they claim. So you're saying bring it on?
I'm saying let's go. Let's agree. People don't like politics. They don't like the personal attacks. They want to talk about. Let's talk about the issues. Okay, let's talk about the issues. Let's don't talk about personalities. Let's talk about what this does. Let's talk about veterans cuts. Let's talk about rural hospitals. Let's talk about national parks. Let's talk about everything. And then, by the way, let's talk about $3.3 trillion more to the deficit. So we can actually give the public the conversation that they always say that they want. We're going to talk about the issues. We're not going to talk about personalities, okay? Good. Let's talk about the issues. Although, frankly, I don't really talk about personalities, but I think it's smarter.
Well, I know you. You like to do both.
Right.
On on tariffs, there's this thing in politics and life, and certainly the news, where the stories are big, and then if they're not juicy enough over time, they fade. So the trade war was a huge deal in the news, Wall Street, everywhere. But as Trump sort of spun it and tried to off-ramp it, I think it's faded a little bit. They did try to basically cool the temperatures with a European trade war. But the tariffs could still squeeze U.S. factories over 4%, passing on those costs. A lot of people, as we know, don't have another 4% in the budget. Over 60%, that includes a lot of Trump voters, say his policies are now making food and groceries more expensive. So however they get their information, they seem aware of that. Does all of this matter, James? Is this trade war failing, or did Trump sort of manage to make noise and then quietly back down?
I think he's probably fought the issue to like a draw. But there was 62% think he's doing insufficient on cost of living. Again, most people don't follow this. They don't understand. Frankly, I don't quite understand the whole thing either. But they get with Japan to make a deal. Japan's going to invest $500 billion in the United States. Japan's invested hundreds of billions of dollars in the United States. They have Honda plants and Toyota plants and Nissan plants all over the country. But all right, most people's interaction, they don't know tariffs. They don't understand the aspect of it, but they know that prices are not going down. And these tariffs are going to really hit healthcare costs, because when you go to the dentist, most of the stuff in there is made in Germany. And a lot of these MRI machines and high-end diagnostic stuff they have, a lot of that is not made in the United States. And I guarantee you that cost is going to be passed on. Now, you don't see that, or you don't think about it right now, but you know that's coming. And a lot of this stuff, people just don't feel the effect of this, and they still feel like things cost too much. And I'm not going to try to dissuade them of that idea.
There you go. I hear you on all of it. James Carville, on More Than One Topic tonight. Thank you, sir. The well-read, the well-informed, Raging Cajun. Thank you.
That's my wife got that.
Yeah? Let's see it. We'll go big. Who drew it?
I don't know. My wife put it behind me, and she set up my thing here, so she's got an artistic eye that I don't have.
Well, many people know your wife. Your wife has been involved in Republican politics for many years. Right. That's always been a matter of some intrigue. It was in the documentary, but the fact that the two of you agree on the Statue of Liberty, Lady Liberty, we'll take that. Okay,
that's great. It's a great piece of art, by the way. It's a great piece of art.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Our thanks to James Carville. We're going to finish a break. When we come back, we have a big exclusive interview with the lawyer representing one of those DOJ whistleblowers. Bombshells facing Trump's DOJ. 3 whistleblowers now have complaints that involve the top DOJ official up for this judgeship, Emil Bovee, who's facing the final vote as soon as tonight, but it's looming no matter what this week. Lawmakers rushing because some don't want to let the whistleblower complaints get traction or more investigation, which is usually what's necessary, particularly when there's no particular urgency to finish the vetting of a lifetime judge. This complaint includes the allegation of direct law-breaking or violating court orders that Bovee told his own subordinates they might have to say FU to the court.
This week is officially the FU week.
Bovee stated that DOJ would need to consider telling the courts silence overtook the room.
He said it because we have seen the Department of Justice disobey court orders.
Career Republicans, career Democrats who serve in the Department of Justice would be equally appalled at that.
A third whistleblower says this same individual, Bovee, misled lawmakers about, of course, what went down in that suspicious or unusual dismissal of charges against the New York Mayor Eric Adams, while there was also talk about some sort of deal over immigration policy. Judiciary Committee Democrats want a probe. And we have a special guest on the inside of all this. Andrew Buckeye is Chief Legal Counsel at Whistleblower Aid. So he represents one of the anonymous DOJ whistleblowers in this case about both ignoring court orders and other reports from inside. Welcome tonight.
Thank you for having me on.
What's most important about your client's account and the other corroboration here as the Senate still considers this vote?
Absolutely. And I think it's important to realize where we are in this very moment. So tonight, as early as tonight, as 8 or 8:30, Emil Bovee, a former attorney for Donald Trump, who's being considered for a lifetime appointment on a federal to be a federal judge is looming. And we represent at whistleblower.org a former Department of Justice senior litigation attorney from the Office of Immigration Litigation. And our client has provided evidence to the Department of Justice Office of Inspector General that establishes that senior government officials, and when they look through those documents, it would involve Mr. Beauvais, directed line attorneys to mislead at best Judge Boasberg in the deportation cases here in D.C. Okay, that's what the disclosure is about. Now, I can't get into the specifics. Erez Ruveni, one of the other whistleblowers, the first whistleblower, is extraordinarily brave and has come forward detailing all the issues. Because my client is a former DOJ attorney and because of their ethical obligations to their former client, the Department of Justice, we took a slightly different approach and went directly to the Inspector General. But what happened today, what I learned today, is quite surprising. So let me go over a brief chronology of events. So on May 2nd
and I'll warn
of
you,
this year,
for your benefit, I've got about 2.5 minutes.
Yep.
Use that time as you see fit, counselor.
On May 2nd of this year, our client filed a disclosure with a DOJ IG providing documentation about senior government officials misleading Judge Boasberg. Okay, that was before Emile Beauvais' nomination. The reason why our client came forward as soon as they did was so that way DOJ IG, somebody in a position of authority, had the ability to conduct an investigation and correct any wrongdoing. Now, our client FedExed that document. They filed a disclosure online through the online portal. That same day, the documents were FedExed to DOJ IG. DOJ IG received those documents on May 5th. We only learned today that the DOJ IG found the documents. They lost the documents. They found them yesterday, our disclosure. So the question is, what happened? So, and by the way, on June 13th, I sent correspondence to the Senate Judiciary Committee to alert them of a disclosure that our client filed on May 2nd, so that way they can go back and reach back to DOJ IG to find out what the status of that investigation is. And here we are today.
And so I'll jump in. I mean, yeah, here we are. And I was going to jump in and say, bottom line, we've seen vetting of judicial nominees, Supreme Court nominees, processes take time. We've seen calls for FBI background checks. Does it look to you like there's any serious review being done, or like both the IG and the Senate are just trying to rubber stamp it?
Well, I don't want to say that the IG or anybody in particular, that the IG is trying to rubber stamp it, but there are certainly questions to what happened between May 2nd or May 5th when they received the documents and yesterday. What happened? And right now, I can safely say that we have members in the Senate who are going to be potentially casting a vote on a lifetime appointment without all the facts. We know that historically, the Senate has slow-rolled a lot of judicial nominations in the past. There is no reason to rush this forward now, right? I mean, here we are.
Like many things these days, like many things, I'm laughing, but not really because it's funny, more because it's laughable. But again, you have an anonymous client. We heard about the other one I mentioned in the FU scandal. We will stay on this. We've invited, of course, people from the DOJ to hear their side, but also the whistleblowers, if they come forward, if they're not anonymous, and their counsel in this case, to stay on these stories. So we will do that. We'll also watch the vote. Andrew Buckeye, thank you. I'm going to fade a break, but when we come back, thank you. Why Wall Street Journal and Fox News, sister outlets, are going opposite ways, splintering as Trump demands Murdoch testify. We are not far into this second term of the Trump administration, but we are seeing a MAGA revolt, anger from Megyn Kelly and others about the Trump playbook because apparently they don't like it when it's turned on them rather than some other supposed people. Well, this is a theory with big government, autocratic-leaning efforts. Most people don't like them unless they think it's never going to affect them. And so here we are with Trump going after Rupert Murdoch, who of course owns Fox News and I should say Wall Street Journal through his empire. Now Trump is using his powers, trying to get judges to compel his, quote, very good friend Rupert Murdoch to go under oath within basically 2 weeks because of the Journal reported on that, quote, racy birthday greeting that they say Trump sent to Epstein. We should know Trump's not only denied that, but sued the Journal over the story. The whole situation, though, more broadly splitting this Murdoch empire, because Murdoch's empire is breaking the bombshell news with one hand, that's that Wall Street Journal account with those lawsuits to boot, while Axios notes it's largely ignoring it and defending Trump on Fox News with the other. There are many legal battles that Trump is waging, of course, against the press. And while people might think the Wall Street Journal leans one way, or they think Disney leans the other, or Meta and X are now warmer towards Trump, notice that he's demanding payouts from everybody while abusing government power to go after universities and law firms, and abusing, according to many, the FCC's regulatory approval over this now $8 billion merger to get concessions out of CBS for basic things like reporting on the campaign or interviewing his opponent, Kamala Harris. Just last night, we heard from an FCC insider, the Democrat on the commission, saying that Trump is weaponizing something that's supposed to be used for fairness and instead is undermining the First Amendment itself. We will stay on these stories, and we'll be right back. All right, take a look at this. It's our colleague Rachel, who you see all the time on MSNBC, but there she is with Lawrence out of the studio. You can go see her and Lawrence and others, Jen Psaki right there, if you go to msnbc.com/live25 for our October event in New York City. If you are in or near New York, you can go to that website right now. We just launched this for the first time this week. The news that we're doing another one of our events. There was me and Andrew getting ready. We did one last year in Brooklyn. This is our first time doing it in Manhattan. It'll be at Hammerstein Ballroom, msnbc.com/live25. As you can tell, I will be there, but really everyone will be there. I mentioned Rachel and Jen and Lawrence, but look at the lineup. We will all be there in person. We'll be talking to you about the news, the world we live in. There'll be meals if you want to come sit down and break bread. Go to msnbc.com/live25. See you there if you're in New York. That does it for us.